Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax guys, complete with scrolling banner and Fat Albert again.
Yeah, just dig those expensive graphics.
Yes. Well, again, those scrolling banners, they're everybody should have one for the upcoming political season with the town hall meetings that candidates will be getting. And I see the wheels turning in your head. What you got there?
Two.
You got to have, one for each back pocket so you can get it out on either side.
It's like a 6-shooter. One for you and one for a friend who would be willing to join you so you get full coverage at the town halls.
Yes.
Or stand out on the street corner at rush hour. It's the impression. People are going to go, well, look at that guy. What's the FAIRtax all about? And then they'll go find out. It's like a yard sign, which are also available on the website.
Website being FAIRtaxStore.org.
Yes.
And so that no matter what you order, the shipping is free. Most of the items have a very minimal cost to them. I mean, this when you think store, that is not a profit-making venture like most commercial stores are. The FAIRtax store is actually kind of an advertising arm of the FAIRtax movement. And so we make things available, including the palm cards that are just totally free. No charge for the cards, no charge for the shipping. Just get those and learn all about the FAIRtax. Leave those with your tip at a restaurant when you go to places like that. So yeah, FAIRtaxStore.org is definitely something you want to go check out.
Absolutely. It's a great resource. And while you're in there, tell everybody we said hi.
Yes. And speaking of checkout, let's put our weekly eyeball on the Congress critters to see what they are doing to the tax code. Again, if you are just joining us here on FAIRtax Power Radio, what we do, we go to congress.gov. There's a search bar up there at the top of the page. You type in the words Internal Revenue Code, enclose them in quotes, so you're looking at that entire string. Then when you hit the go button and activate the search, as of the day we're recording this, 1,579 hits on legislation in the current Congress having to do with the Internal Revenue Code. That is insane. I mean, can you imagine? Let's see, there's 1,579 hits. And I think 1,567 of them are backed by a lobbyist of some kind that is trying to buy favorable tax treatment for their clients. And that's why we've got 70,000 pages plus of statutes and regulations and case law, and the tax code is just incomprehensible because there's so much junk in there that only a relatively few people can benefit from. And it's just crazy that we have the tax code we do. So let's get into it and see what else the Congress critters are trying to do to us. We'll start out with H.R. 8102 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide an above-the-line deduction for flood insurance premiums. I don't know how many people live in a flood zone, but most states, their standard homeowners policy does not cover flood damage. So you have to buy separate flood insurance. And now this bill, H.R. 8102, wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide an above-the-line deduction for flood insurance premiums, meaning, I guess, that the money you pay for flood insurance premiums doesn't count as taxable income. Now that's a FAIRtax supporter here. That's Byron Donald's bill from down here in Florida.
I guess in Florida, coastal communities are looking for that type of consideration for sure.
Yeah, I've heard the entire state of Florida is a flood zone. I've lived here since the early 70s and have seen street flooding in a thunderstorm, but I have never seen a major destructive flood, at least here as far inland as you can get in Florida where I live. But I guess it's possible you can get a flood anywhere if you get enough rain, and if you get a big hurricane on you, you can get enough rain anywhere in the state. So Byron Donalds wants to provide an above-the-line deduction for flood insurance premiums. Okay, well, but there's a companion Senate bill to that too, S 4143, if you're keeping score. But
I am. Thank you.
All right, let's move on here now. I'm going to have to get your explanation on what they're talking about here. This is H.R. 8095, from Trent Kelly of Mississippi to amend the Internal Revenue Code to extend the energy credit with respect to electrochromic glass. That
what?
kind of rings a bell. I think we might have seen this before, but it's to come again.
What was the word?
Electrochromic, electrochromic, electrochromic glass. I didn't have time to look up what electrochromic glass is, but they want to amend the Internal Revenue Code so that such a thing gets the energy credit extended to it. Another one of the famous tax credits. And of course, I still wish I could come up with an exact count of how many different tax credits are in the Internal Revenue Code. This number we got a couple of weeks ago was when Gaver looked that up on an artificial intelligence thing and was told there were like 240 credits and deductions. Don't know how much of which is which, but I still think that's low. I'm just astounded at how many tax credits we deal with here every week on FAIRtax Power Radio. And I've never heard of one for electrochromic glass. I'll have to look that up and see what that is.
Got it for you, Bobby.
Oh, you do? All right, go.
In electrochromic windows, the material changes opacity. A burst of electricity is required for changing, but the materials maintain shade with little to no additional electrical signals. And basically, you put them in a building. As you're building your building, you use them for letting daylight in and views out without glare or excessive heat.
That sounds like those self-darkening glasses, regular glasses that turn into sunglasses when you go outside. So I guess that's close.
Yeah.
All right, well, dig this one. HR 8067. This is to amend the Internal Revenue Code to require additional information on math and clerical error notices. Apparently, if you make a math error or something like that in your tax return, the IRS notices, they send you a little notice that you made a mistake on your income tax return. And I've never gotten one, so I don't know what that is. But Randy Feenstra is the sponsor of this bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to require additional information. Now, how much information do you really need about a math error? They say, you added these two numbers wrong or you subtracted these two. What else is there to know about a math or clerical error from the Internal Revenue? I've got a better idea. Why don't we just get rid of the tax code that requires tax returns in the first place? So it is impossible. I guarantee to you, it is absolutely impossible to make a math or a clerical error when you're paying a sales tax at the cash register when you buy stuff. So let's get rid of the get rid of the income tax, replace it with the fair tax, and get rid of these math and clerical error notice. I wonder how much it costs the IRS to send those things out. They don't really care. They're the government. They don't have to make a profit.
They're spending other people's money, ours.
Yes, absolutely. Our money. Okay, let's go on. This is HR 8049 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to prohibit treatment of certain distributions and reimbursements for certain abortions as qualified medical expenses. Now that's an area that's not our fight to fight. But you look at that and you think that, all right, there goes somebody using the tax code to advance a political agenda. And I'm not going to argue whether it's good or bad or whatnot and whatever. I'll just say that should not be in the tax code.
Correct. I think most people could say that if they even understood why the tax code is used in the first place to advance legislation.
It's to push a political agenda. So that's one of the problems we've got with a tax code that is subject to the whims of Congress. I mean, let's just get rid of all this junk, replace it with a fair tax, pay your taxes at the cash register when you buy things, and you don't care what kind of income you get and whether it's counted or whether it's not counted or whether you get a deduction for it or you don't get a deduction for it. Let's just go the simple way and get rid of all that junk.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. I got one more here. This is HR 8013 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to require payroll tax withholding on independent contractors of certain large businesses. Now, that's something that the Congress critters have had on their radar screen for a long time. People that say, well, I'm not really an employee of this company. I'm just providing services under contract. And if you're a contractor versus an employee, in most cases, the business does not have to deduct federal income tax withholding from your pay or your compensation, whatever they give you. And so the IRS is saying, we want to get rid of as many independent contractors as we can, make them all employees so we can grab their money before they get it.
Crazy. And that's the whole thing is the government takes money from your paycheck before you get to buy anything for your family. And there's such a crush right now on family budgets with the inflation the way it is. And then to think that you're getting a little bit of money taken out every paycheck right now to go to Washington to spend money on stuff. And it's not ours to debate what they're spending money on, but we feel that the fair tax is the way to go in terms of how to collect it more simply, efficiently, and transparently. You'll get to see what you'll get to see how much money the federal government's getting every time you look at your receipt.
Yes, well, you can see how much the federal government is taking from you for if you look on every pay stub, but withholding has gotten people so conditioned that they don't even bother to look at that anymore. They get their paycheck, they look at their pay stub. The only number that makes any difference to them at all is net pay. What do I get to bring home? And people have no idea how much the government is taking from them. It's their money. And then they have to give all this kind of personal information about themselves on a tax return to get their change back if they pay too much tax. About 75% of the people do. But that is just a crazy system. And we need to get rid of that entire crazy system and replace it with a fair tax. It's just plain common sense. Come on, we need to get this done.
It's crazy. It's time. I mean, and I think when we get to the article of the show today that we're going to review, people will really begin to pay attention to HR 25, the fair tax.
Yeah,
that might be the thing that saves this whole cockamamie thing that the president's starting to do, getting ready to propose for the next year's budget. Insane.
Absolutely. Well, we have gone a little bit long on our Congress.gov segment this time, but the article to which you refer is one that came out on Newsmax just a couple of days ago, and the headline on it is Biden's 44.6% capital gains tax proposal is a 100-year high. Can you imagine if I were trying to hurt the economy? I don't think of anything that I could do that would be even more damaging to the economy than a whopping tax rate on capital gains. Capital gains, again, being the difference between what you buy a capital asset like stocks or bonds for and what you sell it for. You have to pay tax on the profit you make when you buy and sell capital assets like that. But now the government, if Biden gets his way, the government is going to get almost half. 44.6% is his proposal. They will take almost half of what you get. That is going to throw the wettest of wet blankets on investing. I mean, why should I bother to take the risk? Because sometimes an investment goes the other way and you lose money. So people still have to be willing to risk their capital, making capital investments with the hope that they will get a return on it. Most of them do. But then if the government is going to step in and take 44.6% of it, a lot of people are going to, heck with that. I'm not going to bother with it. The economy is going to suffer greatly as a result. So that's kind of what I'd expect out of this administration. But to find that they want a 44%, 44.6, almost 45% capital gains tax rate is just insane.
And the information for the article from Newsmax came from the Americans for Tax Reform website, which basically says that combining the federal and state rates, many states in the country, the rate for capital gains would exceed 50%. Like California, for example, 59%, New Jersey, 55.3%, Oregon, 54.5%, Minnesota, 54.4%, New York State, 53%. Can you imagine? And you have, okay, so you've saved $1,000 and now the thousand is worth three since you bought it. So you've got $2,000 and you cash it all out and you have to pay capital gains on that. You're going to give half of it to the government.
Yeah, but where they're really going to nail you is on not necessarily stocks and bonds, but on real estate property.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you bought your house 40 years ago and now it is worth, 5 or 6 times what you paid for it, and you try to sell that, that is a huge capital gain. If the government is going to step in and take almost half of that, what is that going to do to the real estate market? And so the National Association of Realtors, if I'm not mistaken, is not really in the fair taxes corner. They exist to try to protect the home mortgage interest deduction. And their argument, well, if the income tax goes away, then that deduction goes away, and we have no reason to exist anymore. So they're going to try to keep the income tax so they can fight to keep that deduction.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with that picture?
Everywhere around it's cracked and fallen out of the frame. That's how bad that picture is.
Yeah, if you want to kill the idea of investing in real estate, yeah, let's just say we're going to take 45% of what you make when you sell your home 40 years after you bought it. That'll do it. It's crazy.
Well, you get when you transfer your assets at death to your family members or however you propose to to divvy up your estate. A lot, like for instance, family farms get caught in that crunch. Real estate gets caught in that crunch where you have an individual who says, I have 50 acres of land and I farm on it. And now I'm going to pass that on to my kids. And when I die, that's the transfer of that land to the beneficiaries of your will is a taxable event. And then you add, you got the death tax, you got now you got capital gains on the real estate portion of your estate that comes into play there. It's just that, the top capital gains tax rate is more than twice as high as China's rate. China's capital gains tax rate is at 20%.
Significantly lower than what Biden is proposing. So so if you want to drive business to China, that's a good. I'm still not sure that this administration does not want to do that, drive business to China. But But I tell you what's really crazy and what's really scary is another proposal that has been floating around for a while. You understand what stepped up basis is. Let me explain real quick. Basis is a investing term that refers to how much you have in a capital investment. If you buy a stock, your basis is what you bought it for. And then that's subtracted from your selling price to get your capital gain here. But what the administration has proposed doing, and again, this is going to really affect the housing market, was they want to get rid of what they call stepped up basis, which means if my parents bought a house, way back in, the mid 50s for, $30,000, and I inherit that house when it is worth, $500,000.
Right.
Their basis is what they paid for it to begin with. Under current law, if I inherit that house, my basis in that property steps up to what it is worth as of the time that I inherited it, becomes mine. They want to get rid of that, which means if my parents had bought a $40,000 house that's worth $500,000 when I get it, they don't want to step my basis up so that I still have the $40,000. And if I turn around and sell that house, I own a huge capital gains tax on that, which I wouldn't owe under current law. And now if they get this 44% rate in, oh man, I'll have a heart attack after that.
Well, I mean, and in the same breath, out of all of the talk about taxes and things, there's still a conversation out there that deals with a tax on the value of your stock on an annual basis? How much?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the wealth tax. They want to tax you on what your stock is worth, even when you haven't sold it and haven't realized any, money in your pocket from the increase in value. That's another bad idea too.
Where do those two meet? I mean, how do you reconcile between the wealth tax and how that value is calculated on stocks? Because you wouldn't be selling it, and of course, there's no incentive to move stocks or sell bad stocks around because of the proposal of the increase in the capital gains tax. So where does this proposal that we're talking about reconcile with the wealth tax? I mean, the question is, how do you work through those two transactions on an annual basis first, and then when and if you happen to sell stock or real estate or anything else?
Well, let me make note of the fact that the fair tax gets rid of the capital gains tax. So
Yep.
there's no such thing as a capital gains tax under the fair tax. If you inherit something, doesn't matter. You don't get taxed until you spend your money, regardless of how you get it. Now, this article, and let's give credit to the author, a guy named Jim Thomas, says he's a writer based in Indiana. The Newsmax article that we're looking at, he says this budget proposal that the Biden administration is putting forward calls for approximately $5 trillion in tax increases over the next decade. Imagine numbers like that are so big, $5 trillion. It's just almost boggles the human imagination to figure out exactly how much that is. It is a monstrous amount, and that's how much additional tax over the next decade this proposal calls for. That is just crazy. Let's replace this with a fair tax tomorrow, people.
Well, and I think folks will start to take a look at it if it's properly presented to them. Biden's 2025 budget has the highest capital gains tax rate in 100 years, higher only to Jimmy Carter in the mid 70s, and certainly higher than back into the 1920s.
Well, I'm thinking, that if there's still some kind of, uncertainty as to whether the major presidential candidates, i.e. Biden and Trump, are going to have any kind of debate. But if they do that, and now this would be an ideal opportunity for Donald Trump to say, wait a minute, look at this. Joe Biden wants to put a 44.6% capital gains tax on you. I want to get rid of it. If he would just come out in favor of the fair tax. Now, I know that he kind of ridiculed Ron DeSantis for his support of the fair tax. He wasn't, going after the fair tax by name. Remember back during the primary season, Trump was calling DeSantis Ron DeSales tax. Like he was not in favor. But hopefully, as a businessman, Trump just has to see what a boon to the economy the fair tax is going to be. And if we can get to him, if somebody can get to him and explain to him, hey, look, if you go into a debate with Biden and say that he wants to put a 44% tax on your capital gains and I want to reduce that to zero, guess who's going to get a more favorable reaction?
Right. And should. I think the challenge is for fair tax volunteers, and now I'm talking to folks that are watching the video or listening to the podcast, to make it a point to go to 10 people and tell them about the fair tax and talk about, because the 44.6% capital gains proposal is in the budget, in the talks of the budget for the coming fiscal year, and to go to 10 people and say, okay, here's what we got. We got 44.6% on anything you transact. If this ever comes about, I can't imagine that it would. And have those 10 people tell 10 more people.
Don't put it past them. It might.
Hey, yes, exactly. And the fair tax eliminates capital gains. It eliminates all of the federal taxes that are so burdensome, and in some cases create a double taxation situation with the money that you have saved over the years. You were taxed on it early when you got it, as in you're now being taxed as you take it out of an investment or land and move to somewhere else, to some other, maybe you think there's a better place for your money to be working for you. And so we have this impasse that can be solved through getting rid of the fair tax, getting rid of the income tax and replacing it with the fair tax. And
I'll
and
tell you,
IRS too.
I have an assignment for you.
Okay.
I know that on Sunday morning there at your radio station, WTOB in North Carolina, you have a show called the Wealth Guardians. Those are guys who are guiding people through their investments. I don't know if you ever see those guys, but if you do, ask them what a 44.6% increase in a 44% capital gains tax would do versus a capital gains tax of 0. See if you can get them on board with the fair tax as well.
Yeah, and they are very much aware of the challenges with 44.6%. One of our conversations we had a week ago, that was the topic, and the planners that are working there and in a few other companies that are in town are very much aware of a hit that 44.6% would be. I've always said, well, you're going to propose something, you're going to throw it way out there and make it so big that people are going to go, this is insane. And then you dial it back a little bit to what you might really be.
If you really want a 30% rate, you ask for 44.6 and then scale it back to 32, and you get everybody thinks that they've beaten you back to something, and you still end up with more than you're asking for. But that's just crazy. All capital gains taxes are injurious to the economy because they suppress investment. Why should people invest if the government is going to take the proceeds thereof? That makes no sense whatsoever. And that is why the fair tax is going to be such rocket fuel for the economy, because investment under the fair tax, I think we had a study on that one time. It goes up like 70%. It's just insane.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that I think if we continue to get pressure just in the income side, just in the paychecks right now, as we're living in a time where inflation has been sustained to a level where food, especially gas, going back up because it's summer, you're going to end up with a lot of people going, we've got to figure out another way to do this. There's got to be another way, and the fair tax is the way to do that. And as I said a minute ago, our listeners and viewers that are out there, your job is to find 10 people who you know that you can begin to have a conversation with and have them find 10, and let's get the ball rolling. Now is the time. HR 25 has been promised to be debated on the floor of the House at some point. Who knows if it'll ever get there? We hope that it will. But now is the time for the citizenry, for you to get, let's go. Let's get this done.
Yep.
Now is the time. And I believe there's enough pressure from the economy, from this looming 44% capital gains proposal coming for the next fiscal year budget. I think we have a good opportunity to really move the needle forward.
Again, so if you don't like the idea of losing 44.6% of your capital gains to the federal government and even more on top of that to the state government, you should be on board with us trying to replace the income tax with the fair tax. And I'm afraid that's all the time we've got for this week on FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and sharing the videos. We will see you back here again next week, same time, same channel on the FAIRtax official Facebook page and the FAIRtax Guys YouTube channel. Well, until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000, okay? Keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is What?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is 20.
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?